17 general officers removed from their positions in a foreign military. We would call that a purge. That's the technical definition when a new leader comes in and just cleans house. The places where we've looked at these kinds of things are places like China, right, where they remove large numbers of officers at one time. I used to work on Iraq. They would do the same thing. It is very clear that the Secretary of Defense is trying to reshape the department in ways that are very different than previous administrations, and he is critical of.
Welcome to Liberty Report USA. Let's take a look at what happened in the Senate today.
Senator Slotkin.
Thank you, Senator. Welcome. Congratulations on the nomination to you and your family. And you're getting a little preview of how dicey your job is going to be with the president's announcement like 18 hours before you came up here. So I can imagine your poor staff, their briefs changed from last night to today. I think anyone who's coming up here to take an important position like the head of Stratcom in charge of 41,000 people, it's an extremely big deal. Out of a military of 1.3 million people, we only have 38 four-star generals. I think it's a very rare thing to be a four-star in the U.S. military. And it's hard to notice that we are losing 4 stars, 3 stars, and even 2 stars in a pretty unusual way over the last 9 months. Just in those months, we have lost the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, Chief of Naval Operations, Commander of Cybercom and Director of NSA, Commander of Southcom, Commandant of the Coast Guard, the SMA to the SecDef, the Director of DIA, Naval Special Warfare Commander, the top Army lawyer, the top Air Force lawyer, representative to NATO, the Joint Staff Director for J5, the Joint Staff J3, and the Chief of Naval Research. By my count, that is 17 GOFOs, general officers, who have been removed from their positions or retired early in 9 months. I'm a former CIA officer, so we used to look at other foreign militaries and make assessments on them. If I saw 17 general officers removed from their positions in a foreign military, we would call that a purge. That's the technical definition when a new leader comes in and just cleans house. The places where we've looked at these kinds of things are places like China, right, where they remove large numbers of officers at one time. I used to work on Iraq. They would do the same thing. It is very clear that the Secretary of Defense is trying to reshape the department in ways that are very different than previous administrations, and he is critical of anyone who takes issue with him, his leadership, or decision-making of him or the president. Now, you've repeated many times, rightly, that your job will be to give best military advice, but what we are seeing over and over in black and white is that when people in similar positions give their best military advice, they get removed. If that military advice is somehow not in line with the thinking of this president and the secretary, you get fired. So there's going to come a moment. I don't know when it's going to be. I hope you never have it, but there will be a moment behind closed doors, not when the lights are on and the hearings going on, when you will have that really existential decision you will have to make. Do I give my best military advice and tell people news they don't want to hear, information they don't want to hear, or will I just go along to get along to make sure that my bosses are happy and I don't rock the boat? You swore an oath over and over your whole career to the Constitution, not to any one man, not to one president, but to the Constitution of the United States. So can you say with conviction, when your moment comes, because it's coming, you're behind closed doors and you have that moral and professional obligation to make, that you, at risk, knowing that your job is at risk, you will say the right and best military advice based on facts and not just what Secretary Hegseth wants you to say?
Senator, over the course of my career, I've adhered to that principle, and I will adhere to that principle going forward, consistent with my oath to the Constitution.
Well, we are counting on it. And we've had every single nominee come up and say the same thing. I've asked this question to pretty much every single nominee that's come up before me. But those moments are happening. And I think we can see just by the sheer number, 17 general officers removed in 9 months, that you will have that career-defining moment. And because your job involves nuclear weapons, there couldn't be a more important set of issues to work on when it comes to sort of moral decision-making. We are counting on you. The young folks who work for you, those 41,000 people, are counting on you to make the right decision when the doors are closed. So thank you, and I encourage you all of Godspeed.
In those final minutes of the hearing, when Senator Elissa Slotkin leaned forward and delivered her warning, the room shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic in the way politics often is. It was quieter. And in that quiet, it was sharper. She laid out a list, one name after another, 17 senior leaders departing the ranks in just 9 months. Chairmen, commanders, directors, chiefs, positions that shape the backbone of American defense. Positions that do not usually change unless something seismic is occurring. And then she said the word that froze the moment, a purge. A term she explained not as an insult, but as a technical assessment, the kind she once made for the CIA when examining foreign militaries. She drew a parallel that no nominee ever wants to hear, that the United States was behaving like systems we usually caution the world about. Her message wasn't simply about numbers. It was about the pattern beneath the numbers. She reminded the nominee and everyone watching that leadership is being reshaped, recentered, and filtered through a single narrow lens where disagreement becomes grounds for removal. She pointed her remarks directly toward Secretary Hegseth's approach, arguing that those who speak uncomfortable truths or propose strategies that differ from the administration's desires find themselves quietly dismissed. She wasn't accusing, she was diagnosing. And her diagnosis was blunt. This is not what a confident democracy looks like. Slotkin framed the heart of the matter with stark clarity. One day, behind closed doors, without cameras, applause, or political theater, the nominee would face a moment that defines every military leader's legacy. A crossroads between truth and convenience, between duty and compliance, between saying what leadership wants to hear and saying what leadership needs to hear. She reminded him that the oath he has sworn throughout his career is not to a person, not to a secretary, not to a commander-in-chief, but to the Constitution itself. She underscored that the oath is more than words spoken in a ceremony. It's a covenant, one that carries a price. And sometimes that price is professional. Sometimes it is personal. Sometimes it is the willingness to jeopardize rank, status, or even career, because the alternative is to betray something far greater. The nominee replied with the steady calm of a seasoned officer. He promised he would hold to that principle. He promised to offer his best military advice regardless of consequence. He said he would honor the oath he took and the Constitution it binds him to. But Slotkin pushed again, not out of disrespect, but out of necessity. Because the recent past, she argued, had shown a pattern. Those who gave honest military counsel, when that counsel diverged from what was preferred, were replaced. And 17 departures in less than a year were not something anyone could ignore. Her remarks weren't partisan. They weren't about personalities. They were about a system under stress, a system in which the independence of military judgment, one of the core pillars of American governance, risks bending under political pressure. She reminded him that his decisions would not simply shape policy. They would shape the lives of the 41,000 Americans under his command. They would shape global stability. And given the role of strategic command, they would shape decisions that reach into the gravest corners of national defense. Slotkin made it clear, when the doors are closed, when the pressure is immense, when loyalty to truth collides with loyalty to hierarchy, that is the moment that separates those who merely hold power from those who genuinely serve. She urged him to choose service, to choose integrity, to choose the Constitution over comfort. Because in the most consequential positions, and none is more consequential than one involving nuclear responsibility, the moral compass of a single individual can influence decisions that ripple across continents. What she delivered in that hearing was not just a critique of current leadership. It was a cautionary tale about how fragile institutional integrity can become when disagreement is treated as disloyalty. It was a reminder that in a democracy, independence isn't a luxury. It is a safeguard. And that the erosion of honest counsel, piece by piece, doesn't happen with one dramatic break, but with quiet removals, quiet reshufflings, quiet silencing. Until one day, the silence becomes normal. Her closing words carried a weight that hung over the room. "We are counting on you." It wasn't a political statement, it was a moral one. A recognition that the health of American leadership still depends, in the end, on individuals capable of choosing conscience over self-preservation. The people in uniform under his command would be counting on him. The country would be counting on him. And history, with a long memory and an unforgiving gaze, would be counting on him too. This hearing did more than highlight a political dispute. It revealed the delicate line between authority and accountability, and the constant tension between power and principle. It reminded us that American democracy endures not because leaders always agree, but because we allow and even expect leaders to disagree when duty demands it. That is the promise of our system. And that promise must be defended not just in public, but in the difficult, unseen moments where courage is quiet and consequences are real. If there is one lesson to take from today's exchange, it is this: democracy isn't protected by those who go along to get along. It is protected by those who speak truth when truth is hardest to speak. Thank you for watching. And if you believe in shining light on the moments that matter, subscribe to Liberty Report USA.